The last 24 hours in the Blast ecosystem can really only be described as insane. It's been a crazy week in general. We had the first Blast Gold distribution, but we also saw the first major exploit with Super Sushi Samurai, a GameFi project on Blast. Thankfully, that ended up being a white hat hack and funds were returned to the platform. But in the last 24 hours, we just saw a huge exploit of the Munchables NFT/GameFi project on Blast. Munchables is a big bang competition winner, and basically to get the Munchables NFT, the idea was to let users stake ETH and USDB, and for every 1 ETH or equivalent that is locked for 30 days, it would in turn give you 1 free Munchable mint. They referred to this as lock drop, and it went live on February 27th. In theory, this mint mechanism is actually pretty interesting for minting an NFT, especially given the Blast native yield environment where users who staked their ETH and USDB were actually still receiving Blast native yield as well as points. There was also a token emission, the token Nibbles, that would be passively earned through lock drop based off of your TVL. So over time, folks were depositing. And then on March 21st, lock drop goes live, and the folks who had deposited for over 30 days were able to start getting their Munchables. We start to see posts pop up all over the timeline. And then the next day, the first Blast Gold distribution goes out, and a ton of attention is now on Munchables as a big bang winner. And with that, the speculation that their unique mint mechanic would ultimately yield a lot of Blast Gold for future drops. We start to see protocol integrations like Juice Finance integrating with Munchables, and then the Munchables TVL just starts to grow day after day. First, 25 million, then 45 million, then 80 million, and eventually $97 million. And then the music stops. An exploiter manages to take about 17.4 thousand ETH, which is about $62.5 million. People got absolutely wrecked on this. We are seeing multiple 6-figure losses being shared on the timeline as well as in group chats. Emotions are running high across all of CT. This was a massive hack that would have been a huge blow to the Blast TVL. So all of a sudden, you have group chats that are spiraling out of control. People are bridging off of Blast, and then eventually the third-party bridges and Blast Bridge gets halted to prevent these hacked funds from leaving the chain. And then there's this huge debate unfolding across CT on whether or not Pacman and Blast should roll back the L2 chain to right before the exploit to save user funds. And while all this chaos is happening, we're learning more and more about the exploit from folks like ZachXBT and OXQuit. So one of the first things we find out is that the dev is someone in North Korea, and that the attack was likely an inside job. Then we come to find out that the team actually outsourced the development of their contracts to what they thought were 4 different people, but with Zach's tracking on-chain activity, it was actually pointing to the fact that it was likely one person. And the thing about the Munchables contract was it was actually made malicious from the start. So this was like a long con. There was code in the contract that basically would have let the dev yank out, I think, up to like 1 million ETH, which is insane. So as this info is getting rolled out, the chaos on CT is becoming more heated, with people calling Blast a scam chain. We're also seeing ZachXBT track down any social accounts tied to the exploiter, and it's absolutely wild watching all of this unfold in real time. And last night, it all takes a turn. The dev of the Munchable contract decides to hand over the $62.5 million to Blast core contributors and asked for nothing in return. Like, literally nothing. Pacman and team were able to basically secure all 97 million from the Munchables contract and rescue protocol integration funds. This obviously took an incredible amount of coordination from Pacman, Samczsun, ZachXBT, and so many others behind the scenes. I don't know what they did to make it happen, but they made the most unexpected and best outcome actually possible. I personally didn't lose any money in Munchables, but thank you to everyone who helped out with this and the recovery of these user funds. This was, again, just wild to witness and watch unfold in real time. And I feel like last night was such a big win for those of us who have been and continue to be bullish on Blast. Whether you like Blast or not, you have to respect how this was handled by Pacman and team. For me personally, it makes me even more bullish on Blast and its core contributors because never in my life in this space have I seen an exploit as big as the one that we just saw yesterday play out the way that it did. For everyone, both users and teams, I think this should be just a massive wake-up call. I think as you start to go through your research process, figuring out where you're going to deploy your capital, here are some of the things you might want to consider incorporating into your process. As it relates to the contract itself, making sure that it's verified and has been audited by a reputable auditor in the space. Ideally, contracts that hold a large sum of capital should actually have multiple audits as well as an active bug bounty program. It's more like, how can they continue to be proactive, right? The other thing to be aware of when it comes to contracts is whether the contract is immutable or not, meaning that it can't be changed once it's deployed. Or is it upgradable, meaning that devs are able to change it and upgrade the contract at will. If the contract is upgradable, I think there are 2 safety measures that you'll want to look out for or that you can ask questions about. The first one is, does the contract have a multi-sig where multiple signers are needed to authorize an upgrade? And does it have a time lock for contract upgrades? So in case there ever is an upgrade being deployed, there's actually a set period of time before that deployment goes live. And given what we saw with Munchables, I would ask about the team's devs and whether they are in-house or outsourced. I actually went back myself to all the platforms that I have active capital on and just re-verified all of that information about the contracts at a minimum, because I did have some gaps there. And this is something I'm personally going to be more diligent about before using any platform in the future. So that was Munchables, the Blast movie, in case you came on X today just absolutely confused by what was happening. Now, let's dig into the latest Blast Gold updates. So the first Blast Gold distribution happened on March 22nd, and here are some of the high-level things that you should be aware of. First off, Blast Gold is going to be distributed every 2 to 3 weeks. The first drop was only to dApps and Big Bang competition winners, runner-ups, and honorable mentions. But in the future, distributions are going to be bigger and include holders of Blast native assets, both ERC20s and NFTs. How gold is going to be distributed to users is actually going to vary from dApp to dApp, so that is something that you'll want to make sure you have clarity on from the projects and platforms that you're interacting with. Looking at the first distribution, Big Bang winners received about 63,000 Blast Gold, runners-up received about 19,000, and honorable mentions received 5,000. Only winners active on Blast mainnet have received their gold. Additionally, mainnet dApps received a pro rata portion of 6 million gold based on their final weights, which were calculated utilizing this formula, basically category weight times Blast native weight times dApp weight. You can see here for category rate, spot dexes take the top with 5, followed by perp dexes with 4, lending, socialfi, gamblefi, gamefi being weighed at 3, and NFT, infrastructure, and miscellaneous being weighed at 2. Then we have the Blast native weight, which is assigned based off exclusivity to Blast, almost like a loyalty program. So 2 for dApps exclusive to Blast, 1.5 for dApps primarily on Blast but available elsewhere, 1 for dApps available on multiple chains. dApp weight is perhaps the most interesting, with the weight of 0, 1, 3, or 6 assigned based off of on-chain traction, use of Blast native yield, use of Blast native gas fee sharing, use of Blast Points API, and general execution. So you can actually take a look at how each app scored in terms of weight on the Blast Gold distribution sheet. I think the key thing to look at is going to be the Blast native weight and the dApp weight in general. Category weight is good to make sure you have a diversified farm, but it goes back to that thing that I said about picking platforms that you have a genuine interest in using. David from MetaStreet, who is a giga brain, put together this incredible sheet that actually breaks down how much 1 gold costed you per category. This was actually pretty validating to see, as I do have active capital on Juice, Wasabi, MetaStreet, and Thruster, and I am actively using Mangrove and Baseline Protocol. In terms of other projects that receive Blast Gold that I have exposure to, that includes YOLO Games, Crypto Valleys, Cambria, and NFT Perp. As I continue to grow my farm, I'm personally going to be looking for more exposure to Blast native NFTs like Pluto Cats and upcoming mints that actually have interesting mint mechanics, because I do think that there is a big opportunity here for NFTs to get more Blast Gold than folks are expecting, especially given that Pacman has stated that Blast plans on investing heavily into creating a robust L2 NFT ecosystem. So currently, I'm holding and staking Blastopians, Blast Snipers, and New Blast City. I also just picked up some hoods because why not? And you know, your girl is going to try to re-enter into her leverage trading era. I've always had an interest in on-chain perps and just kind of like seeing how all the gold was distributed. I'm finally going to be looking at getting some exposure. So I'm actually looking heavily into Blast futures for that. Hopefully this was helpful. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be rolling out some more farming videos, especially as these platforms continue to push out updates and more integrations. And just remember, we're still early. Blast has been around for less than a month, and it's now the 6th largest chain by dApp TVL and the 2nd largest L2 chain by dApp TVL as well. You know, we're gonna keep cooking. There's some pretty exciting stuff coming up actually in the coming days, including the next Pacman airdrop and the first Blast Points multiplier apps being released on April 1st. Yes, I did make a post about this the other day because I literally thought it was April 1st, but it was not. I lost a week somewhere in my brain. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. As always, bearish or bullish, keep farming, keep building.